welcome here.
Here is where we give you the permission you may not yet have given yourself to show up and be your most authentic self. You can cry here. You can take your time here. To be you is never a crime here. We are all divine here. We shine brighter when we all shine here. We rise higher when we all rise here. We practice being kind here. We celebrate the fact that we are still alive here. Love, only love, is welcome here. You can make mistakes here. No guilt, blame, or shame here. There's only grace here. We know you by name here. We've been waiting for you. So glad you came here. We hope that you stay here. All that you are can be reclaimed and embraced here. Only love is welcome here.
So bring your pain, and bring your sorrow, bring your hope, and bring your fear. And we will wrap our loving arms around you, because love is welcome here.
Here is where we give you the permission you may not yet have given yourself to show up and be your most authentic self. Only love is welcome here.
Wow. I've just been like melted open. So if I can't really speak after this, look at them. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I am the Reverend Lydia Ferrante Roseberry, and I am honored to be the minister of this beautiful congregation. And I'm joined today by Service Associate Marilyn Leist. See, I told you. Tad Coriath, Amy Austin, Debbie Larson, and our newly formed, yet to be named vocal chamber group are providing our music today. And I'm forever grateful for our tech team, Kathy Partridge, who is on Zoom, and Mary Stagpole and Deborah Mensch, who are here with us live. As I say our welcome words, think back to only love is welcome here. And look around you if you like, in your Zoom boxes or around here. And imagine how much those around you may be longing to bring their authentic self into this space. You are all welcome here today. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes, and sizes, gifts and challenges that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. in all the ways that you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love them, you are welcome here. In all the ways you make your living, in all the places you are from, you are welcome here. With all of the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here. And no matter how long you've been away, nor how soon you return, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. In this congregation, we acknowledge that the land surrounding us is the stolen territory of the Arapaho people, and that many native peoples roamed freely on this land for millennia before the arrival of white settlers. And we commit ourselves to being a center for spiritual exploration and justice-making, and to anti-racism and anti-oppression work both within and beyond the walls of this congregation. So this month starts our theme of vulnerability. It's the monthly theme. So I thought it would be perfect for me to get caught up on my Tell the Preacher What to Preach services, because they definitely put me in the hot seat. We're starting this month with Sylvine Farnell's request to me to preach about my favorite Unitarian or Universalist. Thank you, Sylvine. You might expect me, if those of you who know a little bit about our histories, to pick one of our greats, Ralph Waldo Emerson or Henry David Thoreau. But I'm hoping to introduce you to someone that you're not acquainted with. So I chose Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who has been described as perhaps the most prominent, active, and productive Black woman of the 19th century. And how many of you have ever heard of her? Frances Ellen Watkins Harper? Yes, there's a couple of people. Yay! Yay. I chose her because despite of her power and notoriety at the time, she is hardly a household name today. And because she also bestows some of the highest of our Unitarian Universalist ideals. She was an acclaimed poet, which I knew would touch Sylvine's heart. And also, as I hope you'll see, what she spoke about in that time is a thread for what we continue to need to be learning today. So if you're new here, I'm really glad you found us and hope that in this community, whether you're with us in person or virtually, you can experience the warmth and the love of this congregation. Each Sunday is different here, so please come by get back a few times to really get to know us. And we have many opportunities during the week for social connection and spiritual growth. Those on Zoom, you'll have a whole bunch of links coming into your chat as we speak. And those of you in person can go to the welcome table following the service, or just chit-chat in coffee hour, and you will learn about all the wonderful things we do here. Everyone on Zoom today is welcome to stay. There will be a special Zoom conversation, a small group session to further the work of Together Colorado. And if you're in here in person today, welcome to join us in coffee hour at Fellowship Hall. If there are any new visitors on Zoom, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. And for those of us who are here, turn around and say hello to someone, maybe someone you don't know yet, and so we can get to know each other a little bit better. Where's that Gwen? Gwen. Ooh. we'll make that a preview for our coffee hour. And now I'm going to invite Gwen Murphy to come forward and share with us a little bit about her experience at the fellowship.
So this is, thank you for inviting me to give my testimonial on why I'm here and why I pledge. Can you hear me okay? Is this better? Okay. I stumbled into Buddhism about 10 years ago, and at that time, I was not looking for spirituality or religion or anything like that. At least I didn't know I was. My kids were all little. Evie was about 6, and I had just started staying home with my twins who were infants. And I Googled parenting podcasts, and I just stumbled across this Buddhist teacher who I had never heard of before, named Tara Brach. And I had never heard anything like what she was saying either. And so pretty soon I just couldn't get enough of her teachings, and I was so excited, and I became an enthusiastic Buddhist, and I started looking for a Sangha, which is a Buddhist practice community. And at that time, I told some of you, my little punchline was that Buddhists don't offer childcare. Yeah, so I kept looking, and I had never been to a Unitarian church. I had a friend whose parents were Unitarian in high school. So again, I Googled, I was like, Unitarianism, oh, that sounds pretty good. So then I ended up here, and that was in June 2014. And I still remember the first service I came to. Katie Covey was leading it, the DRE back then. And I think it was when she first rang the bell that I just, something inside me knew that I was in the right place. This was the place for me. And somehow it just felt like home immediately. And this was after about 20 years of not having a religious community at all. Really, I'd never had a community like this as an adult, although I was raised in the church. So for those of you who remember, Judy Phelan, who moved to Colorado Springs several years ago, she started a meditation group right about that time, and I joined, and I ultimately co-facilitated with her for a few years. So we'd be meditating in the Thoreau room, and right next door we could hear the nursery with Miss Ari, and we could hear my kids making joyful noise and singing and playing, and maybe not so perfect for meditation, but I loved it because it just felt so perfect to be there, and they were right there getting, these wonderful spiritual lessons that they couldn't have gotten anywhere else in our culture today. So I joined the church right away and started pledging within a year, which is very fast for somebody like me, because usually I stand back, I consider, I wait, and but I just dove in and never looked back, in part because of that enormous value, knowing my kids were building wonderful childhood memories, getting their spiritual education at the same time that I was being held in this important and wonderful spiritual community. And so fast forward to today, my oldest is 15, she's driving now. And the twins are 11, and they have grown up in this church. They don't need childcare anymore, but the kids' programming is really phenomenal. And I'm going to take a moment to plug the SOS, because I just spent a few months volunteering back there with the middle schoolers, and the monthly themes that we have in here are kind of echoed at the kids' levels back there. So they meet the kids where they're at, and I encourage everybody to volunteer. There's a sign-up sheet back at the desk for RE. They're always looking for volunteers. You could talk to Jessica Lakeman or Looking Connections Weekly. And this year is going to be the summer day camp again after a few years of not having been able to hold it. So that is something my kids are really looking forward to. But just how my kids have been encouraged to responsibly search for their own truth and meaning and be global concerned citizens, I could not have envisioned just how incredibly important this church would be to helping them and to helping me remember my North Star as a parent and as a human. This is a place we feel accepted for our unique selves, including my child who is on the autism spectrum and is gender fluid. And for me, so many times I have felt invited to grow in ways I wouldn't have been elsewhere, and it wasn't always comfortable. I've been exposed to so many positive ways of thinking and being in the world. So in conclusion, I can't always get myself to sit down and meditate every day like I used to, although I'm still a Buddhist. But this place, this caring, earnest, heartful community of people with all your diverse beliefs and life experiences is here for me and has been here for me every week. And I just want to take this moment to turn it around and say thank you to all of you for being here for us and for being part of our lives for this almost decade that we've been here, for supporting us, for challenging us in so many ways. So thank you. Thank you.
And now we'll do the chalice lighting. What do you call a backseat driver who's in a pew? If you have a chalice at home, feel free to light it with me as Marilyn lights our fellowship chalice. And those of you on Zoom can write where your chalices are in the chat. Please say the words along with me. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. And now I'll sing our bowl again and ask it to invite you to center yourself deeper into this present moment and the company of this gathered community.
This is a poem about Frances Harper, written by Frances Harper. And you're going to hear more about Frances Harper as the service progresses. The poem is called "The Slave Mother." Heard you shriek. It rose so wildly in the air. It seemed as if a burdened heart was breaking in despair. Saw you those hands so sadly clasped, the bowed and feeble head, the shuddering of the fragile form, the look of grief and dread. Saw you sad, imploring eye. Its every glance was pain, as if a storm of agony were sweeping through your brain. She is a mother, pale with fear. Her boy clings to her side, and in her kirtle vainly tries his trembling form to hide. He is not hers, although she bore for him his mother's pain. He is not hers, although her blood is coursing through his vein. He is not hers, for cruel hands may rudely tear apart the only wreath of household love that binds her breaking heart. His love has been a joyous light that o'er the pathway smiled, a fountain gushing ever new amid life's desert wild. His lightest word has been a tone of music round her heart. Their lives a streamlet bent in one. Oh, Father, must they part? They tear him from her circling arms, her last and fond embrace. Oh, never more her sad eyes gaze on this mournful face. No marvel then, the bitter shrieks disturb the listening air. She is a mother, and her heart is breaking with despair. I'm sorry, but this is so moving.
Good morning. Yeah, powerful poem. It got me thinking. I was going through this music this morning with Tad, just like, okay, I should probably look at this song before we sing it today. Going through the notes, get to the end, and some of the words, which I'll tell you which hymn it is in a moment. The words are, you could tell the love of Jesus and say he died for all. And I haven't said words like that in a long time. So growing up more Christian, things changing, feeling more of a overall spiritual person, not so kind of stuck in Christianity. And I felt a twinge of discomfort, and then realized, okay, what kind of discomfort is that for me to sing those words? Thinking of the horrific conditions that people went through in the African American community. We are going to be singing 1045 in the the teal hymnal. 1045, There is a Balm in Gilead. This is an African American spiritual. And basically, I feel like it's the one thing that they could hold on to. Their belief in a Jesus who would take their suffering away. So thinking of singing those words, it has a whole different meaning after hearing that poem, and then just thinking about, vulnerability, openness. It's okay to feel a little uncomfortable sometimes. So feel free to sing those words, stand as you are able and willing, and here we go. Thank you. There is a balm you cannot preach like Peter, if you cannot pray like Paul, you can tell the love of Jesus and say he died for all. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul.
Each week we remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives and of the abundance of this community by giving half of our plate away to organizations that share our values. Today, half our plate is for Together Colorado, a statewide interfaith organizing group that we've been a member of for many, many years. Together, our congregation with Together Colorado has been working on affordable housing in Boulder County through a variety of efforts. We've been encouraging governments to revise their zoning to include mobile home park zoning and supporting mobile home park residents in their effort to buy their own home, their parks actually. And Lafayette just voted to award $500,000 towards that effort for one of their mobile home parks. I know, it's incredible, through some of the organizing that Together Colorado has done. We've also been supporting the efforts of Lafayette to build Willoughby Corner, a 400-unit affordable housing development that will be net zero in emissions and includes senior housing, for sale housing, and rental housing. Together Colorado also works on climate justice, immigration, and especially through our congregation, securing better mental health services for all. If you're interested in doing more to support affordable housing in our community, contact Anne Marie Jensen. For issues around mental health, contact Kathy Partridge. And also, after the service today, there'll be a small group discussion on Zoom about Together Colorado's work with asking you the question, what is making your heart break? What keeps you up at night? Because it's through the organizing that we have hope and can create the change that won't break other people's hearts that come after us. So you can text your donation at the number on the screen, or if you're in the fellowship today, you can also place a donation in the offering plate as it passes. I invite you to give generously as you so often do.
Nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are, how fragile we are, how fragile we are.
For the work of this fellowship, which is bringing love, reason, compassion, and justice into this world, and for the work of Together Colorado, we dedicate our offerings. Last month, the New York Times wrote an obituary for Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who died in 1911. This article is part of a series called Overlooked. They wrote a series of obituaries about remarkable people whose deaths, beginning in 1851, went unreported by the Times. It's hard to imagine that oversight. She was hardly unknown in her time. And towards the end of her life, the Boston Daily Globe wrote, "Perhaps no colored woman in this country has ever done more for her race than Mrs. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, and no woman more beloved by colored people." But she was forgotten by many. She was also one of the most prominent black speakers of the time about abolition, women's rights, civil rights, and temperance towards the end of her life. She's the first black woman to publish a short story, as well as having published a novel and numerous acclaimed books of poetry in the late 19th century. How sad, how terribly sad that mainstream media and history so often overlooks the powerful work of African American women. So who was Frances Ellen Watkins Harper? She was born on September 24th, 1825 in Baltimore, Maryland, to free parents. Sylvine was also from Baltimore. Born there, Sylvine? Yes, so she was a perfect match for her, I'm telling you. Both of Frances' parents died by the time she was 3 years old. So she was raised by an aunt and uncle, Henrietta and William Watkins, which is where her surname comes from, but we're not sure, actually, what her parents' surname was. But her uncle, William Watkins, was an abolitionist, and she received her education at his school called the Academy for Negro Youth, and she absorbed many of his views on civil rights. Her uncle had also, I think, 5 or 8 other children. And when the children reached the age of 18, they were expected to earn a living. So Frances went to work as a seamstress and nursemaid for a white Baltimore family that owned a bookshop, and they were Quakers. There she spent many spare hours combing the shelves of that bookstore. It was like a candy store for her. And in 1845, when she was 20, she published her first book of poetry called Forest Leaves. That was 1845. In 1850, Frances moved to Ohio, where she became the first woman instructor at Union Seminary, a school for free African Americans. And a year later, she moved to Pennsylvania. In 1853, however, Maryland, which was a slave state, passed a law forbidding free black people from the North from entering the state of Maryland, effectively barring her from returning to her birthplace. Shortly thereafter, she heard about the case of a black man who had disobeyed the law, was sold into slavery, and died during an escape attempt. And it persuaded her to devote the rest of her life to abolitionism. She wrote to a friend, "Upon that grave I have pledged myself to the anti-slavery cause." Given that trajectory in her life, she found the work of William Still, who was the chairman of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. She helped escaped slaves along the Underground Railroad on their way to Canada. She became an influential abolitionist and turned to writing poetry as well, like Slave Mother, that we heard in the opening words, bringing to the white and the black ear accounts of the impact of slavery from a black person's perspective. There were very few who were doing that, especially in poetry. She also wrote essays for Frederick Douglass's newspaper and was one of the most prominent abolitionist speakers of her time. Now, Frances was raised in the African American Episcopal Church. She became acquainted with the Unitarians about the time that she was doing her abolitionist work because there were many Unitarians and Universalists doing abolitionist work. However, let me be clear about our history. Not all Unitarian Universalists were abolitionists. Many were in support of slavery, even in the North, because of the economic benefits. It was a struggle in our congregations at that time. But much of Unitarian theology matched hers, like the concept of Jesus as a person whose life of service and justice could be emulated, rather than a divine figure way beyond our grasp. Her decision to remain Unitarian may have also been political. Although she had personal and professional contacts in both black and white communities ever since her first book of poems was published, many doors remained closed to her. In a society where color lines were drawn clearly, a Unitarian church provided a rare opportunity for people of both races to meet. But I'm also curious about just how many black people were in the Unitarian pews at the time, in Philadelphia, where she was a member. But the Unitarians she knew could help her to advance the causes she supported in places that she could never go. She also retained her membership in the African American Episcopal Church. One of the things she was one of the many things she was passionate about was the education of African Americans, and so she taught in the Sunday school there. After the Civil War, Frances turned her energy to women's rights. On May 8, 1866, key supporters of the women's suffrage movement gathered in a church at the Union Square section of Manhattan with the goal of refocusing the nation's attention on extending the ballot to women. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, also a Unitarian, told this to the convention. Now in the Reconstruction is the opportunity, perhaps of this century, to base our government on the broad principle of equal rights to all. Later that morning, however, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, the lone black person to speak that day, challenged the room with her speech entitled, "We Are All Bound Up Together." She wrote, or she said to this group of vast majority white women, "We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse in its own soul. You tried that in the case of the Negro. You pressed him down for 2 centuries, and in so doing, you crippled the moral strength and paralyzed the spiritual energies of the white men of the country, When the hands of the black were fettered, white men were deprived of the liberty of speech and freedom of the press. Society cannot afford to neglect the enlightenment of any class of its members. You white women speak here of rights. I speak of wrongs. Let me go tomorrow morning and take my seat in one of your streetcars. I don't know what they will do in New York, but in Philadelphia, the conductor will put up his hand and stop the car rather than let me ride. While there exists this brutal element in society which tramples upon the feeble and treads down upon the weak, I tell you, if there is any class of people who need to be lifted out of their airy nothings and selfishness, it is the white woman of America. Wow. Wow. Can you imagine how much courage it must have taken for her to bring her truth as a black woman into that space and challenge the white women to acknowledge their privilege in the midst of them trying to promote their own struggles? As I was reading this, I couldn't help but be reminded of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's grave disappointment in white moderates in his letter from a Birmingham jail. In that incredible letter, he wrote, "Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection." Not surprisingly, Frances split ranks with the women's suffrage movement. And it happened when Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton refused to support the 15th Amendment, which was a voting rights for black men. Anthony and Stanton argued that if universal suffrage could not be obtained, white women should earn the ballot before black men. And here was this black woman, the embodiment of the least in our nation. So as a black, politically astute woman, Frances was so far ahead of her time. Her speeches, her essays, her prose cut right to the intersectionality of racism, sexism, and civic discourse on democracy. She advocated for the collective liberation of all people as a necessity for a truly democratic nation. And this puts her in the lineage of other powerful contemporary African American women whose social location is the embodiment of our need to understand that collective liberation. That is, that all of our lives are bound together, and we cannot separate out the rights of one from the rights of another. Let's take a look at that lineage. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper continually put herself in the position of being the first black woman who, ... There were just numerous accounts of that. So she was like Shirley Chisholm, who in 1968 was the first black woman to be elected to the U.S. Congress, and in 1972 was the first black woman to run for president. When she was asked why, Shirley Chisholm said, "Because I am in love with the America that does not yet exist." I bet you Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was also in love with that America. She was like Toni Morrison and Alice Walker. Harper used written word, prose, poetry, and fiction to bear witness to the lived realities of black people and particularly black mothers. She was like Angela Y. Davis and Michelle Alexander. She advocated in the political sphere for radical democratic reform. And she was like the black women who founded our Black Lives Matter movement, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrisse Cullors. Harper's activism, her activism, put the lives of black people in the center. She was a black woman who was able to lift up the multifaceted nature of oppression. These are the voices that Unitarian Universalists need to heed. We have solidly been a liberal religious tradition which is non-creedal and invites individuals to live according to their own beliefs as long as they accept the liberty of others to do so. That is beautiful. And in a country, indeed in a world, where true equity is still a dream, we need to see ourselves as more than liberals inviting diverse ideologies and beliefs. We need to see ourselves as liberatory, as an active people whose mission is the collective liberation of all. Do you see that difference? We need to get out of our heads and into the embodiment of what oppression does to people. Black women's lives are that embodiment in so many ways. There is another side to Frances as well. Later in her life, her poetry shifted from that explicit descriptive narrative of the horror of black lives to an invitation to experience joy that I'm sure was fed by her religious beliefs. This too is in line with present-day black women activists. Adrienne Marie Brown wrote Pleasure Activism, The Politics of Feeling Good. And that book draws on the black feminist movement and calls on black women in particular to root their activism in ways that provide a fulfilling life. All of us need to do that in these times when there is so much to be dismayed about. Marilyn is now going to read one of those later poems by Frances, which speaks to her desire to have the beauty and the joy of life truly available to all. May it be so.
That was amazing. This poem, yeah, got it. This poem is called Songs for the People. Let me make the songs for the people, songs for the old and the young, songs to stir like a battle cry wherever they are sung, not for the clashing of sabers, for carnage nor for strife, but songs to thrill the hearts of men with more abundant life. Let me make the songs for the weary amid life's fever and fret, till hearts shall relax their tension and careworn brows forget. Let me sing to the children before their footsteps stray, sweet anthems of love and duty to float o'er life's highway. I would sing for the poor and the aged when shadows dim their sight of the bright and restful mansions where there shall be no light. Our world so worn and weary needs music pure and strong to hush the jangle and discords of sorrow, pain, and wrong. Music to soothe all its sorrow till war and crime shall cease, and the hearts of men grown tender girdle the world with peace.
You just basically introduced this next song, so thank you very much. This is number 108 in the Gray Hymnal, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. Please rise and join. Everyone singing together is such a lovely thing. Yeah, music has a way of lifting us out of and at the same time focusing us in on situations and emotions. So let's do it. Thank you.
This is the time in our service when we bring our sorrows, our own lamentations, and also our joy, reminding ourselves how each of our lives is woven with both. If you're on Zoom today and you'd like to share a joy or a concern, put it into the chat and I will read them following anyone who wants to share a joy or a concern here in person. Those of you doing so, just come up here to this side and Marilyn will hand you the mic. And one last one for all of the joys and concerns that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, knowing that even in our silence, we are bound together in the web of life. I invite you all now to just take a couple of moments of prayer meditation. In a world that is so full of strife and challenge, what a gift it is to have the voices of powerful people to remind us of our highest ideals. When each of us in our own lives has challenges that can feel unsurmountable, what a gift it is to have a community of caring, loving people to surround us. When we can feel helpless by all there is to do for collective liberation, what a gift it is to look around and see the example of others and to know that we are not alone in our efforts. Each of our lives is filled with challenges and gifts. Each of us have something to offer. Each of us have much to receive. May we live our lives open-hearted, ready to take action for change, and being the embodiment of love for all. May it be so. I have a few announcements this morning, and I invite those of you on Zoom to stick around to hear them, please. I know that off button is really, really easy to hit, but you're going to miss some good things that we're doing. So, here's the amazing part. As of March 1st, 81 pledges have come in to raise a total of $266,013. At the same time, I'm going to tell you that we are heading into that part of the pledge season where those of us in leadership begin to lose sleep. So, if you have not pledged yet, we really invite you to visit with your steward or just go online and pledge or do whatever it is you need to do to get your pledge in. We have a goal of $500,000 for this year, so that's a mighty goal, and I do believe we can do it. It would request about a 6% increase from everybody, an average of that. So that's a stretch ask, and we know not everyone can do it. But I do hope that many of you can live up to that stretch. Today on Zoom, there's a small group conversation with Together Colorado to hear your needs and concerns. I saw those already started in the chat. Stick around and have that conversation with folks from Together Colorado. And here in the sanctuary, about 15 minutes following the service, Catherine Harris and Millie Montgomery will be leading our UU History and Principles and Purposes as part of our Inquirers series. Everybody is welcome to attend, anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about Unitarian Universalism. There's also a gathering of UU young adults after the service today. Join them in the fellowship hall for games and food, potluck, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, they're gathering, so join them. Snacks and games, young adults. And I wanted to let you know I'm offering a class on UU History and Theology called Faith Like a River. It'll be held once a month in person and once a month on Zoom. The first session, Zoom session, will be Wednesday, March 15th from 1 to 3. And the first in-person session will be after the service on Sunday, March 19th. Each of these are drop-in, so you don't have to sign up. You don't have to be there for all 4, and you can just come as you are inspired. But I think it's going to be a great class, so I hope many of you consider attending. And now I will extinguish the chalice. Please join me in the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, or the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. And the benediction is our new vocal ensemble, singing something called The Blessing.